Good morning, the Director General, Office of Education Quality Assurance, heads of departments, coordinating directors present, Ms. Christine Nazagotsi of our Mirai Partners, greatest evaluators, school administrators and leaders, educators and lovers of the education sector in Lagos State, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Welcome you all to today's workshop themed Positive Behavior Management. It's going to be knowledge packed, just like the last workshop on student-centered learning, which taught participants to apply principles of student-centered learning to evaluate their current practice, including the provision of complex and interesting tasks on the part of teachers. May I please remind us that this workshop is being live streamed and the previous series and models as well can also be viewed on the EQA YouTube channel that we'll still talk about in the course of this workshop. And let me quickly run through our ways of working of the program. Participants need to be present and avoid distractions. They need to participate and use the chat for questions and constructive comments. Do the activities. You will benefit more from this workshop if you truly engage with the task. I believe we are all familiar with this, and with that, we can kickstart today's workshop in earnest. My Director General, please, over to you.
May I see Ms. Ramak that just joined? Good morning, Ma. Welcome to today's session. Introductions have been made, and it's time for your overview, Ma.
Good morning, everyone. I just saw that the ways of working sheet was up. Has that already been taken?
It has. Just the
yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all this AM again. Mrs. Christine Nassergazzi, good morning, ma'am. I hope everyone is well. Thank you so much. So we will dig right in. And as I understand, we've already gone through the ways of working. Positive student behavior management is central to classroom management, right? How we manage those wonderful human beings that come to us, minimum of 20 students in a class come, how do we get them to do what we want them to do, all while behaving, respecting one another, learning, and keeping sanity. For those of us that are parents, we know how challenging this may even be for our own children, right? So this is something that is really central and important to classroom management, is really trying to understand how we can apply positive enforcement in our classroom by having great reward and discipline system in place at all levels, at the school level, at the classroom level. And what I really like about today's session is that we're looking at it holistically, and we're looking at it also outside of the walls of the classroom. We do recognize that great parent involvement and engagement is also quite central to being able to doing this, right? So on one end, having the policy, being able to execute within your classroom, consistently reward the discipline, and also having the engagement of your stakeholders, particularly your parents, on board to have a successful reward and discipline system in place. Mrs. Nassergazzi, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. I love this topic.
I do too. It is really, I mean, the smallest of things can make such a huge impact, you know. So none of us are above learning. So in as much as I'm here to, you know, execute the workshop today, I'm really excited about learning from you all here, learning from your experiences, and to see how we can just make things better.
I mean, classroom management is like a lifelong process. And just when you think you've like figured it all out, there's something new. And we want today, because everyone, whether you're a teacher or you're a proprietor or you're an evaluator, you have experience with managing young people in all likelihood, either professionally or personally. And you also, you know, would have experience observing other people manage young people. So this is going to be very participatory. We're going to ask for a lot of input from all of you. So we did this. Okay, so objectives for today. We want you to articulate, or to be able to articulate, the principles of positive behavior management. And the DG will speak in just a few moments, but what we mean when we say positive behavior management, we want you to be able to apply some aspects of positive behavior management to case studies. And then we want you really to be able to create a positive behavior management checklist. Now, the case studies will be your own case studies. We're going to be asking you to really think about your own experience as we do this. So just as we get started, I would like you individually to write down in your notes what's an objective that you have for yourself in this workshop? What is it that you want to personally get out of this workshop? Maybe strategies to support your teachers, maybe strategies to support a particular group of students if you have student-facing aspects of your work. But we all learn better when we go into learning with an intention. So I'm asking you to set your intention for this workshop. My own personal intention is to learn from a bit of your experience. Now we're going to go into a very, very fast icebreaker. Okay, and this is what we call, oh, yes, I have. Okay.
Make sure you have your pen and your paper.
Yes, because you're going to give yourself points here. Okay. Give yourself 1 point. You're just going to do a little tally. It's independent for each of these things that you have experienced. Now, this is written in maybe a little bit American language, but we can roll with that. Give yourself 1 point if you ever had a student who just drove you bananas. You know, you just like, I don't know what to do with this student. 1 point. Write them down. We'll look at totals at the end. Give yourself 1 point if you just wanted ice cream at the end of the day. You just needed something cold and refreshing.
That's every day for me, Miss Christine.
I know. That I can tell you a personal story about that. Give yourself 1 point if you've ever just wanted some ice cream at the end of the day. So everyone should have at least 1 point, right? Give yourself 1 point if you've ever had a student you just couldn't figure out and been slightly relieved when that student was out sick for the day. I'm going to share a little bit about my student who was like that in just a moment. Give yourself 1 point if you've ever wondered how a parent could be so lovely and a child could be so challenging, difficult, impossible, whatever. And then finally, the reverse, give yourself 1 point if you've ever wondered how a child could be so lovely and a parent could be so challenging. Tally up your points and then pop your point number, no judgment, into the chat. And I will tell you, if it were me doing this, I'd have a full 5 because I wrote this based on my own experience. I've been a teacher. It's been a while, but you know, spent a lot of time in classrooms though. So we would all have a point tally.
I also want to add one here. If you ever had, at the end of dealing with the student, if you actually questioned if you're in the right profession. If you questioned, maybe I need to go and learn how to do something else because these people are going to drive me crazy, or, you know, I'll end up in jail after this class with this particular set of students. If they made you question yourself, your patience, your expertise in any way, shape, or form. Okay, I think some people are.
Me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you've added it to 6.
Everyone
Okay.
else is doing their maths right now.
Okay. And I actually really like this icebreaker, right? Because to an extent, everyone can say that, okay, to an extent, they have at least 1 point. And those of you that have 6, you know, you won't feel bad when you see that other people also have 6. So it really is a great icebreaker that you may want to use in different capacities as you go about these workshops or any other aspect of training that you may do.
So while people write their responses in, I'll tell you the ice cream story. This wasn't a bad thing, but in my 2nd year of teaching, I used to pass a Baskin Robbins. Do you have Baskin Robbins in Lagos? You have Cold Stone.
We don't have Baskin Robbins, but we have Cold Stone. Yes, we have Cold Stone.
Well, I love my Baskin Robbins, and I used to pass a Baskin Robbins on my way home from work. My entire 2nd year of teaching, I stopped for a cone on the way home, no matter what the weather was. Better. And I loved it. I loved my kids, and I loved my ice cream cone. So that was.
I would be also interested to know if it's not ice cream for you, what is it?
Keep it clean.
Yes. Okay, 5, 4, 6. We have
most people in the 4 to 6 range. We'll let you keep doing that because we have a jam-packed schedule. And I'm going to ask you, DG, to just host a brief conversation about this question and maybe invite a few participants to share their thoughts.
Okay, so what behavioral challenges do you or the teachers you observe face at times? So behavioral challenges. We know we face all kinds of challenges, but that's specific to behavior. What behavioral challenges do you or the teachers you observe face at times? So teachers you observe, obviously school leaders that are here, evaluators that are here on the line. Do you find that you have some students who engage in behaviors that interfere with teaching and learning? And I would just add here, if you do, what does that look like? Can you name what some of these behaviors are? Okay, so we've moved on from just acknowledging that to an extent, we've all, faced different type of challenges with our students. And that's what that icebreaker was really getting us in. But now we really want to focus on what specific type of behavior challenges, okay, do you find that some students who engage in behaviors that interfere with teaching and learning? I am really trying to keep my mouth shut in this one, and I really want to glean from you because I could probably go on and on when it comes to this. And of course, it would be different when you have younger students, older students, but some things are not different. Some things you see them across the line. Noise making, lying, restlessness. Okay, keep them coming. I see people are engaged here.
While people write in, I'm going to share a noise making thing. I was asked to jump in when I was VP for teaching and learning at GEMS, into a class because the teacher had a health issue and couldn't come in the first few days of school. And I was looking at this class, and the class size was like not huge, right? But the room was small. So there was about 36 students in a not big room. And I thought, why are they being so loud? And then I looked and I listened to kind of individual students. I realized no one child was being loud. It was just that you had too many kids in a small room all talking at the same time. But we wanted them to talk because it was child-centered learning. But you've got a wide range here, right? Oh, the excuse to use the toilet. Yeah, nothing's more fun than taking a walk to the washroom.
I love that one, the excuse to use the toilet. And that's why I love this workshop, right? Because you can have policies and procedures for everything, including using the restroom, not doing assignments. It's interesting because this, it ties into every single aspect, right? When we're talking about the teaching, some of these things may disrupt your ability as a teacher to be able to teach or to observe. And as a result of that, the learning of students not ready to do their work, laid back attitude, not willing to learn. I think this is the most engagement we've got in a long time. The answers are endless. Can you all hear me well? Okay.
Okay, so we're going to move on. You can keep these coming for sure. The only reason we're moving on is because of time. And I'm going to share, let me turn my camera on. Now, this is not me, and this is not my class, but it sure looks a lot like me and my first class. So I was 24, I think, 24, teaching in Baltimore City in the US. And I had a, class of not a ton of kids, right? 20, 24-ish. But, the school was strict. I never thought of myself as strict, but they had to sit there quite alert, hands folded, just like the children here. And my class was very diverse as well. Actually, I look a little bit even like that teacher in the back. So I can imagine this is my class. Now, I'm going to tell you, though, about that student, right? For any of us who have taught, there is always that student. I'm sure Miss Sirkiayeni has her. So this was my first year of teaching, and his name was Francisco O. And he was young in the class, and I could tell this child was smart. But he was a handful, right? And on my fourth day of teaching, the children had given me a little bit of grace the first few days. They had played school, and I completely lost control of the class. There were children running around. There were like pencils flying in the air. There were spitballs.
How old were they?
Playing. It was, I had a mixed combined second, third grade class.
Okay.
And I was embarrassed to admit that I had no control and I had no idea what to do. That was the worst part. I looked at them. I was like, I don't know what to do. My how do you think you should be sitting techniques weren't working. Everything I had learned in school was failing. And then in the midst of all of this, Francisco looked at me and he could see very clearly that I was no match for these children and that I was out of ideas. And what he said to me in that moment, at little Francisco, second grade class, he was younger than average. So he was 7, maybe 6.5, 7 years old. He looked at me and said, Miss, if you can't beat them, join them.
Oh my goodness. Oh my.
I don't even know what happened. Francisco. I don't know what happened after that moment. I can't remember. Did I just barely get through lunch? Did I just drop it all and read a story? We had no videos to show. This was like, 1990.
Something.
7, 9,
Something.
Oh, it's
Don't review.
Anyway, I made it through the day, but Francisco's name and words always stand in my mind. Now, the funny thing about Francisco, his mother actually transferred him to another school about halfway through the year. And it wasn't his mother, it was his grandmother. But I Googled him not that long ago when I was making this slide. And actually, he works for the governor's office in New York State now, in Albany.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, bless him. Francisco channeled that energy in the end.
In a good way. That's good.
A good way. So that was just good news. Anyway, but what Francisco told me was that I needed a better way. And so I committed myself to learning a bit more about classroom management in a really practical way. And I started by just asking. I looked at the teachers who seemed to know what they were doing. And I said, right, how do you do this with your students? And they shared all of their strategies. And at the end of the day, classroom management is so personal. What works for one person may not work for another. You adapt them and you create your own. And that's what we're going to be doing today. We'll share a bunch of strategies with you. Not everything is going to work for you. They will all be positive because this is about positive behavior. And you're going to think about what makes sense in your context. So I'm going to turn it over to the DG to just define, what do we mean by positive behavior management?
Okay. So enter positive behavior management. And like that we're focusing on, even thinking through this topic, the focus is always on positive behavior management. It doesn't mean that we don't see what is going on that's negative, but that we're choosing to focus on the positive behavior management. So what these strategies are, they're evidence-based and they are proactive approaches to challenging students' behavior. So the key words here is that it's evidence-based. So many people all around the world that I've worked with different types of students, like the ones you have actually tried and tested these strategies. Another key thing to recognize here is that they are proactive in the approaches. They are proactive in the approaches. Please hold on one moment.
Want me to jump in? I can.
Hello, so sorry about that. I didn't want the noise to, okay, so how are we going to be proactive in our approaches to actually challenging student behavior, okay? So one thing I want you to think about is what challenging behaviors do you experience? We've scaffolded it now. We've had you think about overall how it makes you feel with the icebreaker. Then we've had you think about the different things that students actually do. Now we're honing it down to you. What challenging behaviors do you experience? And then recognizing that change is a choice. It's a choice. So it's a choice on part of the teacher. It's a choice on part of the student, okay? But we want to make sure that we are gleaning students toward right choices and that these right choices have rewards. They're rewards, and that negative choices have consequences, okay? So we want to be consistent. Sometimes I find that teachers or just human beings in general, when we're working with standards, when it comes to our expectation, we believe that, we may be seen as mean, right? If we're holding people accountable. But the honest truth is that children need structure. They need it. They need it. So they need to know that there's fairness and that there's transparency in your processes, and that it has nothing to do with how you like them or how you don't like them, or if you share the same language or if you don't share the same language. Okay, so these structures, having these structures in place really help to make that choice easier. Okay, it makes it easier for the teacher to say, well, you know, you're aware of all of this and you still made the specific choice. So removing the onus and the burden from the person and really putting it out there as a neutral choice that they are able to make. Okay, so like I said, when it comes to your students, it's their choice. Principles of positive behavior management. Okay, these are 4. So number 1, behavior is a form of communication. So what is your student telling you? Are they telling you, you know, by coming in the class and being mean to everyone, shouting? Are they agitated? What happened at home? What happened before they came to school? What happened yesterday? What is that child trying to communicate? Okay, I'm not saying that it is okay or it is right, but we first need to understand the root. Okay, or at least consider it. We may not know for sure, but we need to be able to consider what the root of that communication is. Number 2, do not react to challenging behaviors. React to reduce them. Okay, I'll say that again. Don't react to challenging behaviors. React to reduce them. Okay, so we're able.
Sorry.
Okay, I was just going to say that we're able to separate the child from the action. So the child has made a bad choice, but that doesn't mean the child is bad. Okay? Yeah. Go ahead.
No, that was basically same.
So engage in compassionate curiosity. Is my internet working? It seems to be going in and out. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
You can? Okay.
Yes.
Please let me know if you can.
But yeah.
Oh, I did. Okay, please. Okay. So engage in compassionate curiosity. So in as much as you may feel like I'm about to kill this child right now, take a step back. Compassionate curiosity. Titi, how are you doing today? You don't seem your happy, jovial, usual self. Are you okay? Right? So maybe they've done something, you know, that makes you want to say something else or do something else. But I found, and even like I said, it's actually not just about dealing with students, it's how we deal with one another also sometimes. Engage in compassionate curiosity. Then model engaging with emotions. How are you able to model for students or children their emotions, or how they can identify their emotions? If you just say, what's wrong with you? They're not behaving. That may not really just help the child if they're unable to identify why. But if you can maybe throw some things out there, like, I've noticed you're a bit different than you normally are. Are you frustrated about this assignment? Are you confident about your ability to do it, right? So coming up with specific words, specific as opposed to happy or sad, can help child to say, no, I'm not frustrated. I'm just actually angry, or I feel cheated. Now we're moving into that. So helping by modeling engaging with emotions. I think this is really helpful. And as I'm thinking through this, as I'm talking through this, I'm thinking about, I know in some very maybe primary classes, sometimes there's a chart with different faces, and each face has a feeling. So even if a child cannot say exactly what is going on, their reaction, they can identify their reaction. So how are we helping them to model that? That's one. And then for the higher grades, there's something called a word wheel. I should have included that here. That word wheel breaks down emotions in so many different ways, and it's color coordinated and all, and it helps people to say, okay, I'm not really feeling disgruntled, I'm feeling, you know, this way. So being able to model that is really important, because the truth of the matter is sometimes people just don't know how they feel. They're just reacting, but they actually don't know. So then how are you able to fix a problem and you don't even know the root? So it's a challenge, not just for the students, but it also is a challenge for you as a teacher. So really being able to get to the root of that, I found to be very helpful. Miss Christina, I think you wanted to say something.
No, I was just having a flashback to a student that I had again in that first year. His name was Carl. I was trying to remember his name, and it was killing me that I couldn't. But Carl was one of the grade 3. So he was an older for grade 3, maybe 10 years old. But the school had no uniform, no dress code. Public school in those days in the US, there typically weren't uniforms. And when he was angry about something, he would come into school in full military camouflage. And it took about a month to realize that he was angry and felt like fighting. He came dressed for it.
Oh, he would actually come to school dressed in camouflage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. So compassionate curiosity, right, had to come into play. As about a third of my students that year had one or both parents in and out of different forms of incarceration, and you tend to think that it's.
I don't know what is up with the internet today, if it's on our end or maybe your end, but it does seem to be going in and out. I don't know if it's just me with the sound. Can you hear me well?
Generally, yeah. A couple of times you clicked, but it hasn't been bad.
Okay.
But my point is, when he came in fatigues and camouflage, he was communicating something. And with compassionate curiosity, I was able to learn that there were certain things that triggered him. And one was actually visits from his father. You would think that would be a positive, but in some families, it's not always, right? And then helping him with having words to talk about the emotions, not just the attire and the behavior to engage with the emotions. I love the emotion wheel you were talking about, DG. We definitely have to get that onto LLT.
Yes, so, I think maybe I'll try to look it up, and we'll show it at the end.
So we want you for this workshop to really think about a student you've seen or you've had, if you've taught, that puzzles you. This might be a student who acts out, who's defiant, all of the behaviors, any of the behaviors you listed before. Take a moment to see that student in your mind's eye, name that student. If you don't know the child's name, give the child a name. Because we want you to that's your case study, because our next part of this workshop, we're going to be going through different strategies. And we want you to think, is this a strategy that would work with that student or students I've seen like that student? Do you want to add anything to this, TG? Because actually this is your slide and I jumped in.
No, that's fine. I like how you said that students. Students, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's him, that's her. So when you say that student, typically it's maybe someone that you've talked to your other colleagues about, someone that, someone who is always in trouble, right? So I like that student, okay. Yes, there are many that I can think of, but I like focusing on one, because if you can focus on one and find the solutions of one, then you can apply that same framework to other individual students, as well as having a framework and a structure as to how all students can be worked with. Okay, so I think I'm going to give you all about 3 minutes. Think of a student who has puzzled you, maybe for those of you that are evaluators that are no longer in the classroom. Think of maybe a student you had very early in your career. Okay. Maybe the students act out, the student is all over the place, resist every effort to engage, and keep this particular student in mind. If you need to write the student's name, just write that name on your sheet of paper. Because sometimes we don't remember what exactly but we just remember, no, that particular child, no. So write that student's name, right? And think about it. As we go throughout, you'll keep referring back to that student.
I think if you were a young teacher, like many of us were, it's probably like that student whose name you could never give to your own kids. Because you remember his or her behavior in the class.
Exactly. No, I cannot name my child.
Yes, you know what I'm talking about.
Carlos.
Oh, Nicholas. Valeria, I've got two. Funny. Okay, now let's see. Some really great comments that are coming in too. Olamrewaju Ishola wrote, how do you curb home access resulting to bad, wrong choices a student or child makes? That is a huge question. We're going to talk a little bit about the homeschool connection a little bit later on, so we'll park that for now. Ewombiyowo Adeyemi, at times you need to give a dog a good name to get positive behavior. Now that is interesting. I think I'd love to hear more about that comment. Let's see. And students should be given special attention and responsibility. Yes, that my friend Cisco definitely responded well to extra responsibility. All right, we're going to jump into these 13 strategies. So over to you, DJ.
Okay. So, oops, sorry. I was looking through and I expanded all of the chats. Okay. So now that we have this particular student in mind, say it out loud, write it down, do whatever you may. I have Carlos here. Now that you have the student in mind, this micro course will focus on a range of positive behavior strategies. Are this all of the strategies? Absolutely not, but it's just a place where you can start. Think of the things you learn as a toolbox that you just continuously add. You know, a toolbox, you have different things. You have a screwdriver, corkscrew, and then as the need arises, you use that. Okay, so think of these things as a toolbox. You may not see the need for a particular strategy now, but when the need arises, you will know that you need that particular strategy. Okay, so as you review the strategies, I want you to consider this reflection question. What do you need to change? So now we are moving away from the student. What do you need to change? What do I need to change as a teacher, as a school leader, to improve this particular learner's behavior? Okay. And you know, this reminds me of something that people say, like when you get married, right? Sometimes when you get married, they say, okay, you don't like this thing that your spouse is doing. What is something you can change about what you are doing? Okay. And how will the strategy help you to do it?
No comment.
No. Miss Christina said no comments. Okay.
No, DG, you know how much I love Mr. Nasser.
I know,
but
I know.
But sometimes the easiest thing to do is to go for a walk.
Yes, I totally understand. I totally
Um,
understand.
My
Okay.
goodness. And all these things are recorded someday.
Okay,
Okay.
so the next, you want to go to
Yeah,
the
so
next?
on to the next slide. I'm actually just checking the run sheet here. Let's see if this is
I'm reading
me.
some of the comments.
I know this is you.
Okay, so strategy number 1, creating a calm environment. I want to give you a hint. In as much as the physical environment may be part of this, right? There's like a mental environment. There's a calm environment that you can have in any physical environment. Okay, brains need calm to think. So even if your classroom is not so fancy, right, it has to be neat, right? It has to be clean. There are certain things that any environment can imbibe that have nothing to do with what your resources are. Okay, so we're gonna play this video here.
I am going to try to remember the superhero powers of getting, okay, I'm gonna have to stop my share and reshare to get the video to play. We got this.
Okay, so creating, a calm environment. What type of behaviors can you use to do this? And I think this is what this video will focus on a bit. But like I said, even having a place where papers are all over the place, it's not organized, it's not clean, there's no way it's not calm.
To be able to receive the
Can we all hear?
content that you're trying to learn.
Can we just get a thumbs up that we hear first before we go too far?
Did you hear it, DG?
I did hear it.
Okay, amazing, thank you. Yeah, so with this, really just observe the teacher. What is she doing to help support calm, right, in the classroom? And with each of these strategies, we want you to write down the name of the strategy. So for this, like creating a calm environment, just put a plus or minus, or a circle if it's between a plus and a minus. Would this work for you? Would this not really work for you? Or the circle could be like, maybe.
Calm because your bodies are so studying.
Being able to teach children how to manage their emotions is actually a very important pathway to intellectual learning.
Oops, sorry, my fault. Anytime I click on something else, it seems to shut it down. Let's try that again.
Because if you can't manage your feelings, it's hard to open up your brain to be able to receive the content that you're trying to learn.
I do a lot of work around self-awareness, being able to name emotions and then make a choice around those. You have a large range of emotions during a school day working with children. Some are completely joyful and so exciting, and some are really frustrating or incredibly disheartening. When you talk when I'm talking, it feels like you're not ready to listen to me. So one of the most authentic ways for me to help them expand their own vocabulary is to use my personal experience with my own emotions in the classroom. When people start talking about other things while I'm still giving directions, it feels frustrating for me and I have to take a breath, catch myself, and say, it's okay, I'm gonna try again.
One of the critical features of learning is modeling. We learn by watching others. In this classroom, we see the teacher modeling her recognition of her emotions and also modeling how she deals with them in productive ways. And that is the first step in helping children learn to manage their own emotions.
Big breath in. Big breath out.
It's complicated, so we breathe. And that's how so when we're ever going crazy, it helps us calm down.
It's based on real life information. Can you make sure your body's sending a message that you're listening to me? Because it hurts my heart when you look the other way when I'm talking. Thanks, dude. My heart feels much better now. Naming my own emotions and modeling for the students how I can attach a emotional vocabulary word to how I'm feeling and then sort of articulate how I'm processing that is a really authentic way for them to sort of pick up that same skill set. And for them to also see that I, as their teacher, am a real human who's having real feelings during the day, but I'm also doing my best to handle them in a way that is safe and kind and productive. So they recognize that having big feelings are part of being human, but being able to name them and do something about them is really the work we're going to do together.
So maybe we can use the chat here. What did you see the teacher do to help create this calm environment for the students? Or feel free to unmute yourself and share as well if you're able to do that.
I think from watching this, I definitely want us to keep in mind the importance of an anxiety-free environment, right? It will be difficult to ensure that a teacher is able to manage behavior when people are anxious or upset or angry, right? So it's important that we help students to model. We also model. One thing I noticed the teacher was doing, she used a lot of I statements. She said, I feel my heart. I think she said something like, my heart is broken when you don't listen to me or something like that, you know? And I think that also has to do with the age of the students.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if she was working with secondary students, she probably wouldn't say that. But it's a way for the students to also understand what they do, how it affects the teacher and how it may affect other people. So I really like that. And then I also think that it helps with empathy. So if they can empathize with the teacher and how the teacher is feeling, then how can that also translate to empathize to how their classmates are feeling also? Let me see what we have going on in the chat box. Okay.
No comments on that yet. Is there anything you saw as the participants that you thought, okay, that's really effective? You know, I could try that actually, or I could recommend that to somebody else.
Okay, someone said, demonstrating with her hands that the learner should look at her while she's talking. Okay.
Nonverbal signals can be really powerful and help reduce the amount of time you spend as an educator saying, right, look here, look at me, right, giving directions. If you have ways of communicating without your voice, it can definitely actually help increase the calm in the classroom.
I found that breathing exercise is very helpful, especially with young children. I was with my niece and my nephew. They're 4 and 5, sometime in July, and due to their proximity in age, always fighting. So I remember calling Zara, that's the 5-year-old, and saying, what's going on with your brother? And she was saying that he's mean, he's just being mean to me. And I told her to count, and that we should count to 10, and as young as she is, she said 1, 2. I said, okay, breathe. And I said, how do you feel? I feel better. Oh yeah, tell me what's going on. So it works. As it may seem like it's kind of crazy, or you may feel like maybe it's something that can't really work with your environment because maybe it's never been done. But trust me, that breathing exercise work, teaching people what to do when they're getting anxious or they're getting upset is really, really helpful. Someone said she also made use of her space, walked around the class freely. Okay.
Awesome. So we're going to move on because, whoops, there we go. Just to add to that, you know, with the teacher's tone of voice, and this is one thing the first teacher actually did not do. I thought there were too many I statements. Actually, I know I statements are good, but you also don't want
it to make it about you.
Exactly. There was almost
I agree.
too much of that.
I agree.
Neutrality can be important too. So just this is another video that shows a teacher engaging with the students in a way that's calm, neutral, and appropriately assertive. So we'll watch this too.
I want to say, it's not that these teachers don't feel like screaming or they don't feel like flinging somebody's child out of the door. It's not true. They also feel that way, but they've had to also learn to regulate their emotions. And it's really part of, you know, emotional intelligence also, being able to say, okay, I'm not going to let these one or these few students take me out of my mind. I will take back control of this environment.
Exactly. All right, let's play this video, and I want you to capture, in this case, what do you think the teacher does really well to keep that calm environment? And we'll share that at the end.
Where do I need to go to begin my project? Tara, what is your plan?
Developing a calm, neutral, assertive voice is part of the teacher's own self-regulation, which allows them to help students be self-regulated and to be secure in the knowledge that the teacher will be receptive to them, but also in control.
All right, everyone partner up. The tone of voice we try to use when we speak with our students is what we would call calm, neutral, and assertive. Show your partner any emotion. Any emotion. We found it to be immensely important for helping kids to do the right thing and to guide them and to redirect them.
Self-regulation is the way that we manage ourselves to behave in the ways we intend to behave, rather than becoming overwhelmed with anger or fear or anxiety and acting out.
I have a question. Are you starting a new structure or is it a structure, Michelle?
I know it's not a character.
Because I know yesterday was
If we're talking in a voice that is too aggressive, we might accidentally be using fear to manipulate children's behavior.
just the right side.
Using that.
Let's let him take off the screws first.
Instead of helping them to gain that intrinsic motivation to do the right thing for the right reasons.
And don't go to the, and sometimes it's not safe to go to the beach. Because there are sharks there.
Yes, I heard be careful of the sharks.
So the sweet spot is calm, neutral, assertive. And the teachers who get the best responses from kids are the ones that have mastered that the best.
All right, we're gonna get ready now for close reading.
Okay, so what did you see here that felt effective to you? And think specifically about the teacher's tone of voice.
And think about how we saw it play out in the classroom. What did the teacher do as she was engaging her students?
Ms. Unworthy, I'm with you 100% on that. That calm tone helps regulate the pupil's tone as well. You know, as a parent, sometimes that's one of my challenges, right? Like, I can be shrill or excitable. And what does that lead the children to do? They end up being shrill or excitable.
So the importance of modeling is also, and like I said, in some ways it just highlights the need for teachers and for school leaders to actually know how to do this, because you cannot model what you do not know. You cannot model what you do not know. If your first reflex every time a child does something is to shout or to beat, how many children, in fact, you have no voice by the end of the term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is self-preservation as well here. We're going to jump ahead. DG, would you like to share 3 practical ways that teachers can develop this calm environment in addition to what we saw?
Okay, well, like I had said earlier on, right, there's definitely a discrepancy when it comes to resource levels. Many schools in Lagos, you can't sit on a mat and there may be no light, everybody may be hot and all that. So even just ensuring that the classroom is tidy, making sure that things are organized, they're not just papers everywhere. In however way you're able to do, if you can have, some positive, even if it's a positive, a poster up, even if it's something you have to sort of make on your own, makeshift, even something on your door, welcome to Miss Diane's classroom, welcome, right? That's something that some people don't have, but it's very simple. It's very, very simple, okay? In addition to that, I would say in terms of having a calm environment, definitely, as we've talked about, having a toolbox. So choosing 1 or 2 tools that you think will work very well, and then actually teaching them to students, okay? Teaching them. How do you teach students? You can use role play. You can have students guess what a student is feeling, right? So, but they need the words. That's why that word, the word wheel I talked about, I'll try to see if we can share it at the end of this session. We'll have it on Lagos Learns. Having a word wheel where children, if for older children, they're even dissecting what that means and having them role play. Oh, no, he's frustrated, man. No, I can tell he's frustrated because of ABC. So when they're able to identify it in other people, then they can identify it in themselves, okay? So I would say, in addition to just having, basic things in the classroom, having it neat, having it organized, then the movement in and out of the classroom should also be organized. People should not just be coming in and going out anyhow, even if you have many students. If you have a system, so organization is not just about physical things like desks and papers, but being organized in terms of the movement of students within the classroom. How are we going to step out? How are we going to go to the bathroom? How are we going to go out for lunch? Having those things will really help students feel calm. Okay, and it'll actually make you feel calm too, right? So just being better organized, I think, is really a big one. And then number 2, modeling and teaching children, taking time, even if it takes 2 or 3 lessons where you are actually modeling it and you are teaching it. This is how we're going to walk in a class. Nope, we didn't do it. Go back and do it again. I think we're addressing something like that here anyway. But yeah, for me, that's what it would be.
So I'm going to, now, if any of you are in the difficult conversations workshop, you'll know this one already. So I'll go through it kind of quickly, but this is a strategy that can be used as a circuit breaker with really anyone. But if you have a student, I'll use my Carl again, who may come into class agitated, very emotional about something, or in a fight with somebody else, it's a strategy that can work really well. And you can teach students to do it so that they also do it independently. And it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Takes less than a minute to do. So in this strategy, And I want you to do this. If you were in difficult conversations, you've done it already. It doesn't matter. You can do it again. You take a few seconds to list out somewhat descriptively 5 things that you can see. So I might say, I see a green lamp. I see a pile of books. I see my face mask. I see my broken glasses. I see my hair tie. I see my phone. You go ahead and do the same thing, whether it's on your desk, whatever environment you're in your mind.
I like this, Miss Christine. I think, I don't know what we spoke about, but I remember the day vividly that you actually taught me this strategy.
I think this wasn't this
I was in
difficult
the
conversation.
I was in the car. Remember, I remember it was
no, I don't
raining.
remember, but
I
okay.
remember. I remember now. I remember. You know, so that just shows these things actually stick.
Yeah,
I don't know what we were talking about, but I said, see, okay, gas station.
Yes,
Cool.
I do this myself. I wake up very anxious.
It actually worked.
Yep.
It actually worked.
So then 4 things you could touch. So if I were doing that, I can touch my desk. I can feel the pen in my hand. I can feel the glasses on my face. I can feel the itchiness of my shirt. And you take a moment to do that. 3 things you can hear. These become increasingly more difficult and require more quiet for the person doing it. I can hear my air conditioner. If I open the window, I can hear the breeze.
For a classroom, okay, let me wait until it's over so I don't interrupt the quiet.
Well, it's okay. 2 things you can or could smell that can get silly in a classroom, so you can skip it if you want. And then 1 thing that you can or could taste in your environment. I think you were going to ask, how does this work in a classroom? Just like any other form of mindfulness that you might teach, a breathing exercise, you can teach this. And a strategy we'll look at a little bit further down the line is you can provide time to practice. It takes less than a minute. But then if you also have a student who's learned the strategy and they come in, Carl and Rahul have had a fight with each other, and they're having a hard time tuning back into learning, right? Because at the end of the day, the behavior management is for the child's well-being and for their learning, so that whatever is going on is not interfering with their well-being or their learning. You can actually teach them to do this strategy, and they will do it. But just like anything, you teach it, you model it, practice it together, and then ultimately they become independent in doing that. I don't know if I can hear my dog barking. I don't know if that was answering your question, DJ.
Yes, it actually does. I was thinking in my mind how I think someone could use this tool. So and like you said, there are different ways, and it also depends on the level of scaffolding the students are accustomed to. So if they've gone through it so many times, they understand it. But if it's still something quite new, it may be something that you keep for students that are having particular problems or issues, and you're sort of setting time or space aside, maybe outside of the classroom, where you're just talking with them. Close your eyes, and then you're going through it. I was just thinking how this could work, and I think it could work in different ways. If it's something that everyone would do, then how would that work? Because you don't want the things where the children can be so funny.
Oh yes.
They can be so funny. So, thinking through what would work as per time. So the way you use it in the beginning of the term may be drastically different the way you use it toward the end. And for the purpose, like I said, these are all tools within your toolbox.
So write this one down, strategy 2, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Give it a plus or a minus or a neutral, whatever symbol you want to use.
Yeah, I think we should keep track of the different strategies. So the first one we did was
creating a calm environment.
Creating a calm environment, yeah.
And then this is strategy 2, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The one thing I would say about the time you invest in it is you could invest a minute in teaching this, practicing it, maybe 2 minutes, but you can also invest a lot of time in trying to redirect behaviors. So if you help children focus on the present, you're less likely to have them engaged with other distractions. Not that you won't still have it, but you're going to spend less time ideally doing that. The next strategy is focusing on the learning and well-being of students. So this is just a simple one, right? And it's asking yourself a question. How much does this behavior interfere with the learning and well-being?
Christine, sorry, did we skip the slide on practical ways to do this? Because I really liked the start request rather than stop request. Are we going to?
Oh, yeah, that was when you did that. You shared some other practical ways.
Oh, I did. Okay. I don't think I spoke to it. I don't think I spoke to it. Okay,
Just
but what I really like here is giving a start request rather than a stop request. So we're not going to wait until they're making noise to say stop making noise. We're going to start with our processes. Remember, I talked about having some procedures in place. So when students are coming in, we're going to start by bringing out our notebooks and writing for 5 minutes. Based on the prompt on the board. So we're also being proactive in getting them into the learning and also trying to get rid of any issues. Okay, that's one way to use it. You could obviously still use the start, and you can use that start as opposed to stop when the behavior has also happened. But if we're going to be in the spirit of being proactive, before we know something become an issue, we will start.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean,
that's the only one I wanted to just really focus on because I thought it's really important. Stop making noise. Stop making.
Oh,
we will start writing in our text. We will start, we will start as opposed to we will stop.
I mean, even
redirecting.
Yeah. We could give so many examples. I'm going to try to keep myself from storytelling because I could go on all day with this, but the really important thing to point out. So with the behavior, you have to think, does this potentially negatively impact the learning or the well-being of the students? And if it's the case of a child who's, just doing something, this is a very American example. I feel like this wouldn't even happen in Nigeria. You can laugh at me if you want, but let's say you have a child chewing gum in the classroom. Well, that's always against the rules. Always. Every school has the rule you're not allowed to chew gum. Let's say you see one child chewing gum in your class. Do you stop the class then and there to tell them to stop? Maybe not, because it doesn't really directly impact that child's learning or well-being at that moment, nor does it affect the learning or well-being of others. You may speak with them after class, but if you stop class at that moment, you're actually going to take away from the learning of all and potentially even the well-being of the child who has broken the rule. And this is about the judgment call. Not everything has to be addressed in that moment. Sometimes you just move on and focus on the learning. It's only when it's causing a direct problem that you want to stop class for these types of infractions. So
another thing,
I
actually wanted to add to that. So another thing is, because in the spirit of being proactive, right? One person chewing gum today can lead to 10 people chewing gum tomorrow, right? So we also want to make sure that there are things that we like visual cues, and there are things that we can refer to, right? So for instance, if a child, because in this case it may be chewing gum, in another case it may be something else, right? But we want to know that we've established some routines and some rules. So if I say, if students are working on everything and I go to the students and I say, Mr. Tomiwa, remember rule number 6, and leave it at that. Either tell him on his own quietly and move on with the general where no one even knows, or if I feel that maybe it's something else that they're doing that may disrupt the learning, I can say, I want us all to still remember rule number 6. And that rule number 6, it will be listed like on a poster in the classroom. So you have to make sure that your space, your procedures, that everything is working together. Definitely, I know some schools use contracts, which is fine, but you always almost want to have, the reinforcement behaviors very succinctly stated, something you came up with together, 5, 6 steps, very quick, very broad, where students can refer to it physically. It is right there, it is tangible, so that you can refer to it and you don't need to sort of talk about it. So that's another thing that I just wanted to bring up. Okay, next slide.
Okay, so we're going to have to move a little bit more quickly just to make sure that we
do the time.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we actually don't
but I'm going to turn this one over to you. Now, I think it's important to connect these workshops. So if you were in student-centered learning, building relationships was one of the key things they talked about. It's also part of positive behavior management. So over to you, DG.
Okay, and thank you for removing that box. So building relationships with your students, with your parents, it's important that we're able to communicate, right? So giving advice is a non-confrontational way of drawing a learner's attention to the positive behavior you want and that you expect. So not just doing for doing's sake, but having embedded in that advice, why? Everyone always wants to know why. They know, they need to be reminded of the why. Okay, so for example, if you shout other people down, they won't want to listen to you. Okay, so that draws that child's attention to what they are doing, but it also it helps them to make a better choice. That, do I want to be listened to or do I not want to be listened to? Okay, so strategically communicating where it's not just one-sided, where we're just saying, stop shouting. Stop shouting. But if I'm giving advice and if I'm saying, if you shout other people down, they won't want to listen to you. So that has brought the onus of that behavior in the child's lap to be able to make a choice that is in their own best interest, actually. Okay, so it's not just because the teacher has said it, but they can get buy-in. If you're able to get students to buy in to the rules, it is better for everyone. Okay, so like I said, this tells Ify that the consequences of her action in a non-confrontational way encourages her to stop shouting people down so that they will listen to her or to him. Okay, next slide.
So, strategy 5, aligning with parents before problems arise. I was fortunate enough to have this strategy shared with me when I was still in school for teaching. And what I did was I actually made a stack of cards that each card had every child's name.
Can we see you?
Oh, can you see me? Yeah, hold on. Sorry, I turned my camera off for a second.
That's okay.
Hello. So you want parents' first contact with you to be positive, right? And I credit this to Miss Barbara Moore Williams from the Philadelphia School District, who shared this with all of us doing our master's in education. Your first contact with a parent should be positive. Unfortunately, more often than not, it's negative.
Yes.
Mrs. Ajayi, if he keeps shouting out in class, right? It's usually a negative call home first. So Ms. Moore Williams, we always called her BMW, Barbara Moore Williams, Miss Moore Williams said to us, make a deck of cards, index cards, write the child's name, write the parent's name, write the parent's phone number, and every day before you get too tired, call a parent and say something positive about their child. Even if you have to search out of the cobwebs of your mind to find something positive to say, say it. and start with the children you know are going to be the most challenging so that you can get to those parents and establish a positive relationship before you have to call them to say, we have a problem we need to work on together. Now, the next strategy, and I'll be super quick.
Before we move on that, I know you said was shepherd time. I also like that. I would also say, sometimes people have so many students to work with that you can schedule it ahead of time. So you can have a schedule of when you will reach out to parents. And even if it is the same message, the same text message, it was a pleasure having your child in class. I love the way they contribute. Even if it's general for now, even if you can't get to the specific ones, I think it's very helpful. So one is that text messaging or WhatsApp is an option. And then two is keeping track. Make sure you have a way of keeping track so you're not repeating certain students and that you've gone your round.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, this one, we're not even going to spend any time on this slide because we talked about it. Be clear. Yes. I'll share just the example at the top. What are you talking for? You don't want to know and you don't care. You don't care what they're talking for, most likely. You need them to stop. Or what are you doing under the table?
Why haven't you done your work?
So this is in Arabic, there's an expression, Shisawi, like, what's going on? What are you doing? You may feel like saying that, but it's not going to lead you to the behavior you want. It's just going to create distance between you and the student. So over to you for 7, DJ, giving choices.
Okay, giving choices. This is a big one. I love giving student choices. Okay, so you want students to feel like there's ownership over their learning, over their behavior, and you want them to know that they have a choice. They have a choice to be responsible. They have a choice. And like I said before, there are consequences and there are rewards. Okay, so be clear about the choices that your young people have while they're in your classroom. What are the choices that they have? And I think coming up with choices, we can use them in a variety of ways when it comes to like assignments, number one. So if you're giving some people an option to do an essay and another people an option to do artwork or whatever it is, that's different. When we're talking about choice, it puts it right in their ball court. Okay, so look at this example. Henry, I've already asked you to put your hand up when you want to ask me something. Please make the right choice in the future or I will not respond to you. Okay, so instead of saying, Henry, put your hand down, we keep telling them that they are choosing to make a choice that will not allow me to answer you. So if you want me to answer you, make the right choice. Likewise, if it's about them doing homework, okay? If it's about them doing homework or classroom or talking, whatever it is, if you've told them to do something, you've discussed it before then, your rules and all that, all of these things work together. I can't stress that. I can't stress it enough, the importance of those procedures, especially in the very beginning, when everyone is fresh and all, So the beginning could be the beginning of the term. It could be when they come back from midterm. They can say, this woman has changed. You can regain your power. I don't like saying power, but it's true. You can regain some sort of sanity, even if it's gone horribly wrong for the past few weeks. You can regain it. Beginning of a week, beginning of a day, it is possible to regain it, but you do have to be clear on what your expectations are, and they need to be centered in student choice.
I'll give you one from home, actually. So I've been having issues with my 13-year-old getting him to put his phone down. I'm sure. Don't know if other parents occasionally face these issues. I'd imagine you do. Yeah. And finally, I realized my strategy of put your phone down was not working. So I said, you need to check your phone in with me twice a day. So your phone stays with me and you can decide, do you want it to be the time between school and football practice or the time between football practice and bedtime? But the idea of checking his phone in seems to be much more child friendly, and giving him some choice around when that happens seems to be working. It'll work until it doesn't anymore. Now, strategy 8 and 9, we've already really run through. DG has spoken about this. Teach the behavior you want, model it, and then provide students with the opportunity to practice that if needed. So we're going to just skip right over that. I love this little kid. Look at him. Oh, so bored. It's another lecture. Behavior management, it's easy to lecture a class for hours on what to do, what not to do. You know, iffy, you've been shouting, I can't handle your shouting, none of your classmates want to hear you shouting. All that you've done is put on a show for the other students at that point. So you want to keep it simple. I loved what DG said about have your rules posted in the room. I want to draw everyone's attention to rule number 1. Check yourself and make sure you're following it. It seems like some people aren't. I'll come around to tap you if you need to change that behavior. No lecture, you move right back into the teaching or the learning activity. Oh, I love him. This is a really big one for me, and this is a bit personal. Oftentimes teachers will say, maybe this is just more American schools, but I will give you 3 warnings until you face a consequence for shouting out, for not doing your homework, whatever it might be. If it is a rule that is clear, that the class has agreed on, that you've made explicit, you do not need to give 3 warnings. You can be generous and give 1 warning, but there can be consequences as soon as the child breaks the rule, if that rule has been made clear, right, and is a reasonable rule. Because what you end up teaching a child when you say you get 3 warnings is you can do this 3 times. Yeah,
that's true.
You just can't do it 4. Is that a Nigeria thing, or is it just more of a US type thing, DJ?
I think it's more, it was more of a US thing.
Okay.
Well, maybe it depends on the school. But generally speaking, I mean, my own personal experiences, you know, some teachers have that look that they give, and but I would imagine that when the children, maybe if the children are older, and like I said, sometimes the lack of organization is actually what gives way for these things. So sometimes if a class is very full, there's just one teacher, you know, they give way for these things. So it's even more important in such circumstances. You can't change the amount of students you have in your classroom, but you can make sure that their processes and their procedures, and you are consistent. Those are the things that will make one person more successful than the next, you know.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'll turn this one over to you, DG, giving compliance time.
Okay.
So you have just, if he is shouting out again, you've spoken with him, you've explained. If you do that, people will not listen to you. Now what? What happens?
Now I want school leaders and to teachers, well, leaders in general, you are always on display. You are always on display. And when you're on display, people are watching to see if you're going to lose. So you are working with a particular student or person when it comes to a lack of compliance, how you handle that, especially in the presence of others, may prevent other issues from coming. actually a more important issue than that one student or teacher that you're working with. So it's important that you don't always require instant compliance, especially if it's something that doesn't have to do with safety, safety or health. Okay, so that allows them to take face so they don't feel like you are telling them to do something now. And if they don't, that in an average, there probably is compliance, but is it just compliance we're after? Okay, is it compliance? Is it just compliance? Because you can get compliance that are disgruntled. You can get compliance and you can get it in a way that doesn't foster good relationships in the classroom. So it's important to think through that issue of that tussle of power. How important is it as per that time, right? And are we going to save the big guns of instant compliance? What type of issues are we going to save that for, where you're like, I saw another face of that woman today. Oh, no. Are those issues going to center on the issues of integrity or, safety of other people, or, things that are really, really serious? Okay, so because we also want people to take us seriously each and every time. You don't want them to say, she's just going to get upset and that's it. She won't do anything as a result of it. So there are many things at work. One thing is allowing that person to save face in front of us. Another is to maintain your composure so that you send a message to students and to other people present that you are a professional and you are in control of that circumstance. And then the last but not the least is to make sure that you're holding people accountable for the behavior. So you're holding them accountable. And if you're holding people accountable, it doesn't mean that necessarily has to come with shame.
Absolutely. You can have a student and a teacher kind of locking horns over something so little. Stop tapping your pencil, put your shoes back on, whatever it might be. You can say, I'm going to come back around in a minute and I want to see that you've done this by then. That allows the class to calm down. They're no longer staring at the student who is creating the issue. They've moved on, and it gives the child some, time to comply, where they're not watching everyone essentially caving to the teacher's demand. And then being consistent. I think, DG, you have said that throughout this workshop. Consistency is everything. So we're going to wrap up with one last piece. And we're going to do the compressed version of this. For educators, having a checklist is something that can be really helpful. When we think about checklists, why do checklists matter when you're leading something? It can help you remember the most important things in high stress environments. This is why doctors have checklists. It's why firefighters have checklists. Pilots, yeah, absolutely. Teaching is a stressful profession. It is. And I can't remember the numbers, but there is a statistic on the number of decisions a teacher has to make during the day. And it's astronomical compared to any other profession. So on top of that, managing the stress of classroom management can be really tough. So for every educator to have a couple of classroom management strategies or principles that they adhere to, that work for them, that they can always go back to, that they repeat as like a mantra, is really helpful. So we're going to ask you to do that just through a poll. And I want you to, depending on your context, think about what are the 4 most important strategies from this list, and don't worry, we'll display it, if you are student facing for your students, or that student you were thinking about throughout this workshop. If you're not student facing directly, but you're in a school, what are the 4 strategies you would most want your teachers to adopt? And if you're an evaluator and you have the benefit of being out in multiple schools, which 4 strategies do you think would make the greatest difference for the schools that you go into? So we're asking you to pick. Now, we had to narrow the 13 down to 10, which Ms. Fausia did deftly so that we could run the poll. You can pick up to 4 on the poll and then submit. So we're going to have you do it as a list and then a poll, but we're just going to jump right into poll since we are, as always, a few minutes over time. So can you see the poll, folks? Thumbs up or a Y or an N in the chat. Pick up to 4, which behavior management strategies would mean the most for you. Can I just see in the chat, are you able to see the poll, everyone?
Not yet.
I see the poll, but
you're seeing it as, oh, no, this is for the participants. You're seeing it as a presenter, so that's a little bit different. But no, we've had a few participants complete it. That's good.
Okay, I think they started now.
Pick up to 4.
Miss Christine, I can't see it though. I can't see the, okay. I can see it now.
It's a little bit different when you're in as a panelist because I launched the poll. So you probably would see not the poll, but the poll response coming in as a panelist, I think.
It's also interesting to look at these strategies, and I think if I were walking away from this workshop, I would want to create a larger umbrella strategy. You know, a larger umbrella strategy that will include all of these, and that to make sure there's uniformity as a school as to how we're going to be doing this, because oftentimes, you know, a teacher can sometimes but do so much, and they need support of their administration to make sure that they're able to put these things in place. It's not something they can often do on their own. So I think it's also very important, if we're thinking of the end in mind, that the administration makes a conscious effort to have, you know, a behavior management system. And then these are the ways in which we will go about doing it, or we'll execute it. But having the system, because the system will then focus on the policies that have to be in place as a school too. And that's also showing that you support the teachers, and the students know that it's not just a teacher thing, but it's a school thing. And the parents know it's not a teacher thing, but a school thing.
Totally. And I love, by the way, that participants are Mr. Christopher Igbobi has written in that he can't access the poll. Not sure why.
Is there an alternative way to access it? Maybe clicking somewhere?
I love that people are, if you can't access the poll, you can add your own thoughts into the chat, because a few people have added basically write-in votes, right? Some additional suggestions. For example, providing positive feedback, which we didn't talk about on positive behaviors. It could fit into the broader umbrella of building relationships, but it's also important to be really explicit.
Absolutely. Like I know in some schools that I've seen, some of the positive, you know, the rewards would be maybe if you've done some positive things, you get a dress down day, You get to wear whatever you want if everyone else is wearing uniform. Maybe you get to have lunch with the principal, you know, so there are things that could be done. Maybe there's another one I've seen where you get a ticket that you don't have to do homework, you know, so you've earned a no homework day. Your homework is waived or something like that. Okay, so those are definitely things that we can use on the other end.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not getting the right balance too, because too many extrinsic rewards and people, you know, start to lose. I thought the point in the video about intrinsic motivation that comes from being a little bit more neutral and focusing on learning for learning's sake. But there are also times where it's okay to say, I want to celebrate you. You're making this classroom community even better. Okay, so we've had about half of the participants. Let's give you about 30 more seconds. Gigi, I don't know if you wanted to call in questions. We're about 8 minutes over, so maybe we take another 2 minutes-ish, maybe one question or comment.
You mean from the panelists? Okay, yes, we can. We can.
Okay, so it's time for question. Please, I've nominated 3 people now. Mr. Akinola Adetola, please kindly unmute yourself and let us have your questions so far, your contributions. What have you learned so far? We have 3 nominees. Mr. Akinola Adetola, please go ahead, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I have questions, then I also have a contribution. But let me start from the question, the aspect of where we have a strategy of trying to make sure that the pupils, like trying to control the time in the class, and you pick up something that since you are against this rule, your play time, you won't have it. But because they know that they could go to higher authority where that could be a kind of a reverse, because they know that playtime is also something they valued. So how can I make it in such a way that that part of playtime that have ceased from them because of against the rules in the class, what way will I use in such a way that they will feel it, that really once that rule is against it, whatsoever my final decision on the playtime, nothing will change it. That is one. Then secondly, the contribution aspect of it, I really appreciate this webinar. It's really opened my eyes for so many things in the creating positive behavior. I learned so much aspect of those strategies that could bring together. Really, I am experiencing something like that in the class where the pupil, they felt so much playing than listening in the class. At the moment they find they lose time, they pick it up. So I gather so much of those strategies, which I am very hopeful to make use of after this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Akinola Adetola. I want to go to your to your question about taking away playtime. So it's very important that there's one voice on the level of the school as to what teachers are able and not able to do. So I know in some circumstances, for instance, this is equivalent to some people saying, okay, you can't go out for lunch, but children need to eat, right? We don't want anyone to say that you starved their child. So in a particular school, I know they said that you can't say that children should not eat. So the difference was that the teacher will say, you must have lunch with me, as against having lunch with your peers. So that's one way to look at it, right? So I think the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out what is allowed and for what purpose. If playtime is not like a requirement per se, then it's something I personally don't think that it's something that, that you can say that you don't want them to be a part of. If they're saying they're unwilling to allow playtime, then maybe after school or before school, when their peers have gone and they're rushing and they're sitting. So we just have to work around it, but you also want to be compliant with what is needed in your school, because if a parent comes to complain, you need your school's backing, right? You need your school's backing to say, this is our policy. Okay, so if we're saying that a playtime is required because of physical activity, minimum 30 minutes or whatever have you, maybe that could be cut short, number one. Number two, maybe, like I said, it could be in the morning, like a morning detention or afternoon detention where you are literally detaining them for some minutes. And you can use that time to talk to them or have them do some work or whatever it is, but they know that they've been called out for a specific purpose. I think this also has to do with the grade level also. Yeah, I don't know if Ms. Christine has anything to add to that.
Mute. I was on mute. I would echo what you said. I think, as you very rightly said, Mr. Adeola, is taking away playtime from children actually increases behaviors in the classroom that aren't desirable, because they need that outlet. They need, especially younger children, they just have to blow off steam. And while it's true for many girls, it is true for almost all boys, especially. So if our focus is making sure that we're seeing fewer of the undesired behaviors, then playtime is really important. So finding, as the DG said, other forms of consequences rather than taking away playtime is probably most helpful, or rewards for positive behavior that are desirable enough that the students who may be running afoul of other rules are willing to sort of shape up, right, for that dress down day or tea with the principal. Just a quick thought on that. We're 15 minutes over, DG, so I'm not sure about other questions. I feel like this workshop, we could go on and on and on.
Yeah, we probably can.
So before second contributor, Ma, there's a question on the Q&A session from Mr. Adeniji. He's saying, building relationships with parents. Don't you think that teachers will cross their boundaries? So he wants to know if building relationship with parents would make teachers cross their boundaries.
Well, this is a professional relationship, right? So it's not that I want to get to know the parents or I'm asking. It's not like that. It's more having the child at the center and recognizing that the parent is a key stakeholder in that process, right? So, and it can take on many different forms. It could be like a newsletter that you are sending, maybe quarterly or monthly or termly, whatever it is. It could be a weekly check-in. Oh, good afternoon, ma'am. This is Nika's work. She did very well. She needs to just put in some more effort this week. Just communication, right? So that they know. So that's on one end. I know Ms. Christine did talk about, having some positive things to say, because sometimes literally a phone call it won't even take up to 1 minute. Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Adenika's English teacher, and I just wanted to let you know that she's been so fantastic this week. We've been learning about verbs, and she's been working really hard, and she's been doing really well, and I look forward to the next topic. I just want her to focus more on being creative with her verbs or something like that. Simple. 1 minute out of, but like I said, sometimes that may not be feasible. So even if you're analyzing your class and you say half of these children are doing okay in English, some are doing, and you just even split it up that way. If you're an elementary school teacher, however way, just make it a way that is consistent. Make it a way that's consistent so they know they know that sometime during the term, if there's any complaint, you'll know, no, at some point I actually reached out, or I reach out every week, or once a time I normally do reach out to, So you also want to be able to defend yourself if there's an issue. So it's important to be consistent in any mode you ascribe to.
And this isn't the focus of this workshop per se, but I think if we look at digital systems in schools and knowing that the access to technology varies widely, if the teacher has access to a smartphone, and the majority of parents have access to a smartphone and at least intermittent connectivity or data, there are platforms that can really help with this. One such platform that's very, very popular, I'm sure some schools in Lagos use it, is Seesaw, where the teacher can snap a picture of something the child is doing and communicate it back to the parents with, comment about how it relates to the curriculum, et cetera. And it's a good way of building in that positive communication. But the school policies, as the DG said, are really important too. How often is the teacher expected to do this? Because you don't want teachers then feeling like, oh gosh, do I have to do this every day? You kind of want to protect the teachers there. And same as in any other professional relationship, you're probably not going to be friends on Facebook, but you may make the occasional phone call.
Yeah. One last thing, I know we're over time. One last thing I just wanted to also talk about as a tool for the toolbox is some schools engage in teacher visits to the home at some point of the school year. That's one thing that some schools are able to do, where they actually visit the home of the student. And then another thing, it's escaped me. I think my brain is telling me it's time to go. There was something else I wanted to mention. It has escaped. Oh, I'm sorry. The last thing that I wanted to also mention is, sometimes when you're dealing with a diverse group of parents that have different education or different language, it's good to know what those language barriers are so you can prepare. So for instance, if the parent only speaks Igbo and they don't speak English, how will you prepare to speak to that parent? Or maybe you'll get an Igbo speaking teacher in the school that will help you to make that phone call, that type of thing. It's important to know how people like to communicate. So some people are good with phone calls, text message, WhatsApp, in person, knowing that is important. So getting some sort of baseline information about about what works best for parents also. So I think we should wrap up now.
I know, we could just keep going and go. It's such an interesting topic, isn't it? So thank you, everyone. And thanks for your patience. I think we still have 62 people have stayed with us for this extra 20 minutes.
Well done, everyone.
So thank you so much.
I don't know if we ever went back to the survey. Did you want to talk?
Oh my goodness. Yes, of course. Okay, end poll. Share results. Okay, so just a quick look on the results. And as we said, it's super personal. Obviously, creating a common environment came out really strong here, with 64% of participants participants who responded, saying that they would advocate for that, and building relationships, another 64%. So they would advocate for that. And then, it becomes a little bit more mixed, but it really is about developing.
Even limited choices had the least.
Lower than 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And aligning with parents before challenges arrival. That was only 25%, but I will tell you, as an educator, that was my superhero power. So, all right, but anyway, it is personal, right? I never liked using behavior charts. Other people like using that. So we tried to keep these pretty high level so that, you could think about what works in your context.
You. Absolutely.
For me, right? That was like, not my thing.
No, I mean, for what works for the individual teachers. That's great. Thank you. Right, partners and Mrs. Christine Sargazzi, thank you so much for facilitating yet another session with us. Thank you to all of our participants. I think we got to 60 something. A few people have been streaming out. Thank you. We do apologize for going over time. We will do better to keep the time. We know that you're very, very busy. Thank you to the entire OEQ team and everyone who's been involved in this process in one way or another. Looking forward to the next one. I believe the next one may be on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. But like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that comes as a result of this, but we want tools that you can add into your, okay? So thank you all. Thank you, Mrs. Christine. Thank you, everyone. God bless you all and see you next time. Please remember that this session is live streamed on YouTube now, and it will be available, the recorded session. All of the information is also at .com. So the power time to show the word part, but I'm sure if you just Google it, you'll find it. It's called a word circle or something. It's circular and it has colors on it if you're interested. So enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, DG. Thank you, OEQA. Thank you, all of the participants. God bless and have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you.